from a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA. This is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to cuddle with your domesticated reptile without getting salmonella. And now, the podcast host who has no use for pet lizards because they just won't reciprocate his love, Pete Dominic!
That is right, Mr. Peacock. Thank you very much. Welcome back, buddy. And I am very happy to have you, all of you, listening to today's episode of Stand Up, where my very special guest is the great Larry Wilmore, writer, actor, producer, comedian, legend in my mind. We caught up yesterday, had a great conversation, and I think you are going to love it. No talk of pet lizards, but then again, I hadn't heard Pete's intro yet. So I had a great day yesterday. Laura Coates asked me to come down. Her producer asked me to come down to appear on CNN in Washington, D.C., so I took the train down there, slept over at my favorite hotel, the George, on Capitol Hill. And I just have to say this about my friend Laura Coates, because she is so kind and generous and thoughtful, looking out for me, as I like to think I always have for her, and it was great to see her. It was great to meet Kara Swisher for the first time. And let me just tell you this story. So I'm on CNN, on TV, the segment wraps. I'm on set with Alison Camerata and Laura Coates. They're co-anchoring, and on panel was me, Jonah Goldberg, who's a conservative guy, and Kara Swisher, who is one of the most well-known, respected analysts, commentators, columnists, podcasters, just working today. She's got like over 1 million followers in her social media outlets. And so the segment wraps, and Kara kind of goes to say goodbye and thank Laura. But Laura just went out of her way to kind of almost like put a hold on Kara's goodbye to make sure that she made contact with me and thanked me and told me good job. It was just a moment that's hard to describe, but usually in media and Hollywood and the circles that I've been in my entire career, entertainment and political media, it's a classic kind of looking for the more important person, the better opportunity, looking over you, literally over your head to somebody else in my case. And she's just the opposite. Laura is just the opposite of that. Always makes the person that she's talking to feel like the most important person in the world. And so I just wanted to open the show by saying something nice, specifically about my friend Laura Coates. So, also, Kara Swisher is worth going down there just to meet her as well. And you always meet people in the green room. There's so many of the people who've become actually regular guests. People like Glenn Kirshner are people I met in the green room and were on panel with. It's kind of the reason to do more of these TV appearances. So Kara Swisher, Will Jawando was in the green room before me. Robert Draper was there. I'm going to be having him on the show as well. It's always a great networking opportunity, and you meet people to do these TV panels that last sometimes 3, 4, 5 minutes, but then you get to have a longer form conversation on the show here. So it's definitely always worth it. And I just love DC. I love going down there. I love the Amtrak, and it was a great productive trip. Got back in time to talk with Larry Wilmore. Also had a great conversation with Ali Velshi, which I will post tomorrow. I know you are really going to love that. He is always awesome. But today is Larry Wilmore Day. Before him, let me just get to a couple of news clips and stories I wanted to share here at the top. First of all, there were 2 debates last night that you probably know about. You get the Val Demings versus Marco Rubio Senate debate in Florida. You probably heard clips or heard about that. But did you hear about the Minnesota gubernatorial debate between the incumbent, who is the Democrat Tim Walz, and this real screwball conspiracy theorist doctor named Dr. Scott Jensen, who basically admitted to prescribing opioids. He is a conspiracy theorist. He's been spreading this horrific debunked claim about that there are litter boxes in schools. There aren't litter boxes in schools. Anyway, there was this moment at the debate, I guess it must have been at the end, where they asked this stupid question: can you say something nice about your opponent? I don't like that. I think it's dumb. It's just so contrived and forced, and they're just campaigning against each other so hard. Maybe you like it, maybe I'm wrong about it, but I don't really love that question. And whoever shared this, I forget who it was, quoted around it, watching this, my soul left my body. Here it is, the weirdest moment I've seen so far in a campaign. I leave the silences in there for the reality of how you feel when you watch it. Let's go.
Other than thanking them for being willing to serve in office, what is one nice thing you can say about your opponent? We'll begin with Dr. Jensen.
Really long pause.
I've thought about this question. I think Tim Walz is an affable individual who has a wonderful smile.
What?
Thank you, Dr. Jensen.
What the? Yeah, I watched that clip like 400 times. So there's a lot more where that came from in that debate. It was pretty ugly, pretty terrible guy. This Scott Jensen really blowing it where they might have had it, but he's such an extremist that it looks like hopefully he's going to lose there in Minnesota. But Minnesota listeners, tell me if I'm wrong about that and anything else I need to know. No, we need to know about that one. The other, much more popular, I think, got a lot more attention on social media, at least, debate was between Val Deming, who is a former sheriff and current congresswoman from Florida. She's taken on Marco Rubio for that his Senate seat there in Florida, or the People's Senate seat. And so many good moments, but this one's just a minute long. I'll share this with you from last night's debate in Florida.
She's been in Congress for over half a decade. She's never passed a bill, not PPP, not anything. Not a single bill she's passed has ever become law. I'm proud of the fact we saved millions of jobs. I'm proud of the fact we did it in a bipartisan way.
That's not true. I know the senator, look, and I'm really disappointed in you, Marco Rubio, because I think there was a time when you did not lie in order to win.
Ooh.
I don't know what happened to you. You know that is not true. My first term in the United States House, I passed legislation to help law enforcement officers with mental health programs. Your first term in the Senate, you voted to turn Medicare into, basically to abolish it, and then turn it into an underfunded voucher program. And then you gave the biggest tax break to the richest of the rich and said you'd pay for it with cuts to Social Security and Medicare.
All right. Well, most people's reactions to that debate last night was that she just ate him alive, and her performance was far better than his. She showed how weak and much of a hypocrite that he is. But will it matter? Seemed to be the consensus. A lot of concern. It would seem that Republicans are looking like they've got the edge. I saw the Real Clear Politics is predicting that Herschel Walker is actually going to win in Georgia, which is just makes your head explode here just a couple weeks before the midterm elections. And I'm not really giving a lot of credit or credence to these polls, no matter who they are, from 538 to Real Clear Politics or the Cook Report, Larry Sabato's Crystal Ball, none of it. Just do everything you can to support your local candidates and anywhere else. Send money, make calls, texts, postcards, whatever you can. Do all that you can to turn out the vote, because that is the only thing that matters, not the polls, but the voter turnout. All right, now let's see what else do I have for you. Oh, I like this clip. This is Nancy Pelosi went on MSNBC News to talk to Andrea Mitchell, and this is what transpired.
On the day of the riot, you said that if he led the rioters and came up to the Hill, you would have punched him out.
That's right. I don't even like to talk about him because it's really a tragedy for our country.
But you did say you would have punched him out.
I would have punched him out. I said I would have punched him out. I would have gone to jail, and I would have been happy to do so.
Would you have done it?
For our country. He wouldn't have had the courage to come to the Hill. He's all talk. But
I love it. I love the way that she handled that. And I don't love the way that Andrea Mitchell asked, would you have done it? I mean, what? What do you think? I mean, yeah, exactly. He wasn't showing up. He doesn't show up for his fights. He sends his rubes, people he's grifted in his stead, including his own family. So I thought that was interesting. I wanted to share that one with you. Also how about this? This is a really important development. And you're seeing all these billionaires investing in and buying social media networks. I don't know how big Parler is at this point, but is one of these conservative kind of everything goes, anything goes, except for you can't have porn or something. Social media platforms. I forget who it was. Some reporter went into Parler and said the N-word is basically everywhere. And I think you might have to use it just to get an account, actually. But anyway, Fox business host and man who looks and sounds like a small British mouse, Stuart Varney, confronted the CEO of Parler yesterday, asking him multiple times whether people should expect anti-Semitism to be tolerated on the social media platform once Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, takes over. Listen to this.
George, are you going to go for total free speech? And if so, does that include allowing anti-Semitic posts like the ones that got Ye locked out of Twitter?
Well, thanks for the question, Stuart. I want to take it back to a higher level here, which is at what point do we censor speech? Parler has always maintained its community guidelines, which have been very clear. We don't allow for pornography. We don't allow for financial doxing. We don't allow for intellectual property theft. But as soon as you start drawing distinctions as to what is and isn't hate speech, you sit yourself in the seat of power as to what can be put online and what can't be put online. And that's where we've ended up with the problem with existing social media now, which does overtly censor speech. And that's the problem. So once you start deciding where that scale is going to be set, you're in a world of trouble.
Yeah, but you got to tell us what's going to happen here. I mean, we all want free speech, but do we all want anti-Semitism writ large on Parler?
Well, I mean, I don't think Ye has given any indication that that's going to be the case. I mean, he's obviously wants a platform for his voice. This is what he's now got. There are plenty of platforms out there which will censor speech.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, George, but is this what we can expect? He takes over, takes control, and starts making anti-Semitic comments. I mean, that is entirely possible, isn't it?
I mean, the platform will continue to adhere to its community guidelines as outlined in its terms of service. That's always been very clear, and we will continue to adhere to the guidelines that we've put out and which have allowed us to operate freely within the confines of the law.
So bring on the Nazis is what it sounds like he's saying. Thank you very much. All right, one more thing I wanted to play for you today. Yesterday, President Biden delivered some real crowd pleasers, some trash talk to a Democratic audience when he warned that Republicans and conservatives and the Supreme Court are about to find out how much political power women have. He was speaking yesterday at the Democratic National Committee event in Washington, D.C. at the Howard Theater. President Biden focusing in these comments about the abortion issue here.
The anger, the worry, the disbelief, the unbelievable fact that for the first time in our history, the Supreme Court didn't just fail to preserve a constitutional freedom, it actually took away the right that was so fundamental to Americans, took away a right. And the fear that now that most personal decisions may not only be made by the woman and her doctor, but by politicians to make that decision. The Dobbs decision, the court practically dares women to go ahead and lead and be heard. One of the most extraordinary parts of that decision, in my view, was when the majority wrote, quote, women are not without electoral, are not without electoral or political power. Let me tell you something. The court and the extreme Republicans who spent decades trying to overturn Roe are about to find out. As they say in one of the times ago, they ain't seen nothing yet. Just take a look at what happened in Kansas. And come this November, we're going to see what happens all over America, God willing.
God willing. Well, I hope he is right about that. President Biden yesterday in Washington, D.C. I don't like that phrase. I'm not going to lie to you. What if God's not willing? What if God is a kind of a dick, a misogynistic man who it's his fault that women have lost their rights here in the United States of America in 2022? What if that's the case? All right, sorry, being ridiculous. All right, just a couple of other news stories I wanted to tell you about in case you hadn't heard. Special Counsel John Durham's probe into the origins of the FBI's Trump-Russia investigation suffered yet another very high-profile blow yesterday. John Durham loses again in court, and so that was a big news story yesterday. Was it all a waste? Also, yesterday I went in and tried to get a turkey sandwich at this deli in New Jersey, and right when I walked in, the guy, before I even said anything, I'd never been in that deli or anything, and it looked like a good deli, and he said, I hope you're not here for turkey. So apparently there's an issue with bird flu, with some kind of flu The ongoing spread of bird flu will likely affect the price and availability of turkeys this Thanksgiving. Not only my sandwich yesterday, but apparently right now the price per pound of an 8 to 16 pound turkey is $1.99, up from $1.15 last year. A 73% increase, and it's all due to, at least seemingly, bird flu spreading during the colder months. But this year, commercial turkey producers were reporting cases of avian flu in July, a time when farmers are raising their flocks for the holiday season. So that is a really upsetting headline to read, to hear. A near record number of U.S. chickens and turkeys have died in this year's outbreak of avian flu, as a different form of the virus than farmers battled before has infected more birds that then transmit the disease. More than 47 million birds have died due to infections and cullings. Also, this, unrelated to turkey, unless you want to really force a segue, Liz Cheney now is saying that the January 6th committee will issue a Trump subpoena, quote, shortly. I saw that last night. Multiple White House officials say that the U.S. Strategic Reserve, oil reserve, contains roughly 400 million barrels of oil, and President Biden could order an additional release as early as Wednesday, when his chief of staff, the brilliant Ron Klain, said that he's set to deliver remarks on the administration's effort to lower gas prices. Certainly that's coinciding with the midterm elections. He's really worried, as he should be, as we all should be, about the price of gas. So hopefully strategically releasing oil from the strategic reserve will have some effect to suppress the price of a gallon of gas, because that's not going to be great on election day or the week before. The Department of Health and Human Services announced yesterday to award millions of dollars in grants to expand all hours mental health and substance abuse care in more communities around the country. So that's some really good news. And now one more fun story, good news story. The first Asian American on U.S. currency. The trailblazing Chinese-American actress Anna May Wong will be the first Asian American featured on U.S. currency as part of a program that includes notable women on American quarters. Wong, who is considered the first Chinese-American film star in Hollywood, is the fifth and final woman to be individually featured on the quarter this year. Okay, well, that's all I've got for you here at the top. Now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to get to my conversation with the great Larry Wilmore. Larry is a comedian, a writer, a producer, and an actor. And I met him years ago when I was the warm-up comedian for The Daily Show, and he was a correspondent there. Later on, I interviewed him a couple times over at SiriusXM, but this is the first time that he came on the podcast. He's got a new show that he is the executive producer. It's available on Hulu. It's called Reasonable Doubt, and it is a legal drama thriller, come from some of the same people that worked on ABC's Scandal with Kerry Washington. Matter of fact, the showrunner was a writer on that show, and Kerry Washington directs the first episode of Reasonable Doubt. It's really good. I watched the first episode. I love Larry Wilmore, so I was really happy to talk to him, to have him on. We talked about a whole bunch of things. I thought this was a really fun, smart, thoughtful conversation. Larry was really nice to me, and I hope that you will go watch Reasonable Doubt on Hulu. And also his podcast is really good, too. It's on the Bill Simmons Ringer Network, so it's well produced. It's really good. Larry has awesome guests on the podcast as well. Look for that wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's called Larry Wilmore, Black on the Air. And, of course, he's great on Twitter, at Larry Wilmore, and it would mean a lot to me and the show. If you like the show, you want to support the show, it's one of the best things you can do is go over to social media, Twitter, or anywhere else, and let my guests know that you heard him here on Stand Up. He's at Larry Wilmore, thelarrywilmore.com. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do it. I'm a huge name. It's Larry Wilmore, who I have always been a big fan of and have gotten to know just a little bit over the years. So I'm really psyched to get to sit down with you again, Larry. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. It's so great to see you again, and I'm glad you're doing well, my friend. Got that happening really nice there, Pete. I like that. Yeah, you like the bearded? Do you like the white? It shows wisdom. It shows wisdom. The salt and pepper. Yeah. See me with glasses, I go up 2 more notches. All BS. It's all BS. I can go about 2 minutes into to many things, and then I'm out. But I did prepare a lot to talk to you, and so thank you for joining me. And
sure, of course.
course.
How are you doing? I was reading about, everything, catching up with you, and I kind of like to ask people, how COVID was for them. But then I read that sadly you lost your brother, who I know you were really close with, is a really talented guy. So when my question about how have you been and what did you do during COVID, I suppose that was probably a big event in your life.
That was the big thing in COVID, the big life changer thing. But I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, I think it kind of recalibrated what's important to us. What are the things that we should really be caring about? When you saw so many people leaving the workforce or changing jobs and everything, for me, it just made me double down on just how important family is, and just to, make sure I'm not forgetting that, because I'm used to being busy and that kind of stuff. Oh, I can't make that thing. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, make time. Like, today is my sister's birthday, and, she lives, let's say it's a traffic problem to get there most of the time, because I'm in California and there's like a dinner tonight. Normally I said, I can't make it. I'm like, no, Larry, you're making that. It's go. It doesn't matter. Stay. Even if you're in traffic for an hour and a half, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Go do that. It's important, so that's, to me, the biggest lesson of COVID. My daughter just moved to New York, and now I miss all that time that I had with her in COVID. Family, man. Just doubling down as much as possible.
You like your family?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't all get along all the time, but family's important, You have to try to make those relationships work,
Have you ever had, and you have to answer this, but everybody's got issues with their family members, those they're closest to and those are not, but have you ever had an issue with anybody in your family over some kind of news issue, some kind of political issue? Because that's divided and broken a lot of families, but what about the Wilmores?
Not any fights over it, because most of it is my parents now, it's that type of thing. So it's more of a, it's that type of thing, but I wouldn't fight them over it. Some of it is some of it, with the COVID stuff, and my dad is so stubborn and everything. It's not a fight, but it's a struggle. But we've never had arguments. Like, we're not a politically arguing family. We're not that type of family.
That's good. That's a good thing, because that's everything else.
We argue over everything else, but
right?
Not politics.
That's what I mean. Like, everything else is normal.
Microaggressions that gets this family going.
Yeah. So work-wise, that's awesome. I love your answer about, rediscovering the importance of family and time with those that you love, and that value becoming, more important. But what about work-wise? I feel like, because your career, you've done everything. Everybody. You can do whatever you want. So I assume you're super busy just taking meetings. You're Larry Wilmore. You're on the call. You're writing this. You're acting in that. You're producing this. You got a dog, apparently, that you have to take care of. Like, what about work-wise? Were you working like crazy because you could? You're sitting home doing Zooms and all that?
No, not as much as you would think. For me, work is more of a thoughtful thing. Like, I always take time to think about what is the thing that's really worth my time to get into, and some projects I've been involved with just take time to get going. COVID slowed down, like, just the business of things. There are some periods where I'm really busy. Sometimes things come out all at once, so it looks like you're doing all those things, but actually they were done compartmentalized, so there's an illusion of some of that out there. But having said that, I have a company. My company's at NBC Universal, and we, produce projects. And so I'm always involved with multiple projects that I'm kind of spearheading. And sometimes those projects are things that I'm writing myself or, involved in more directly, but it's kind of what I like to do anyways. I like to do that. When I was doing the nightly show, it was the only thing I could do, that took up all of my time. So I was actually more busy doing the one thing, hosting a talk show, than I am doing like 5 or 6 things right now. I have a podcast, I produce that and that, and I have, like we said, I have time to do other things too. So, but there are periods when it's so busy, it's hard to fit everything in. But that's where I have a team and all that kind of stuff to try to help out.
I love the podcast. I listen to a bunch of your interviews on the way up. And the weird thing is like, you're now executive producer of this new show on Hulu, Reasonable Doubt, and you had Kerry Washington and the creator,
Ramla Muhammad.
I was going to screw her name up, and it's weird because you think, well, even with these super smart, brilliant people, it's still not that interesting or entertaining to talk about a TV show or a movie. It's always hard to make that interesting. It's like, just watch it. And yet it was a really fascinating conversation that I felt like I was sitting in on with these three people that work together. But tell us about how you came across this show. Some shows you created Bernie Mac. Some shows you hosted or you collaborated on, or you just wrote or acted in. But what about this one? What was your responsibility to this show? Where did it come from?
It's a great question. And I'll preface it by saying there are many different types of collaborations and ways to be involved in things. And I like so many different forms of that. You know, I like co-writing, I like co-producing, I like collaborating, just trying to figure out ideas. I like mentoring things. I like different types of collaborations. So just so you know that, there's not one way to do something, only because I love talking to creative people, and that sort of thing, and trying to make something. So Reasonable Doubt was, I was at ABC at the time, ABC Studios, and I saw that Kerry Washington, her company was there and she was producing. I'm like, oh, that'd be great to work with Kerry on something. I was always a fan. And we got together and talked, and they were thinking about this project of doing a show based on Sean Hawley, who's a superstar lawyer. And Sean had tried to do a show before, hadn't quite gone, and now she was with Kerry's company, and they brought me in. Not that I had done dramas before, but just to collaborate on something with Kerry. And it kind of started with that. We found a writer who turned out to be Ramla, and we developed the show first for a network. And my input is about story. The thing that I bring to the table more than anything else is story. How are we telling this story? What are the elements of story? It really is my bread and butter in the business, is really getting writers to really clarify their stories, and it doesn't matter whether it's comedy or drama, how do you effectively tell that story, And so that's where my gift is, and hammering down on that, even more so than what's funny about something, which, I try to bring, even more so what's beginning, middle, and what is the story that we're telling here. And so we first developed it for a network for ABC, and it got close, but it didn't quite go. And we thought the show was gone. In fact, I moved over to NBC and we thought it was dead. And then the ABC signature, their kind of streaming part of it, said, you know what, we like this idea. Maybe it could be a streaming show. And so we got the Avengers got back together, and Ramla was able to turn it from a network show to a streaming show. And that was a whole different creative.
That means explain that difference, because some people might hear it as like, oh, that's a technical thing. But I think what you mean, according to the conversation I heard you guys have, you can say things and do things and show things. And I'm glad, because this show it's awesome and entertaining. It's provocative. I'm not going to lie to you. I was aroused a little bit. There's a lot of hot, steamy, and beautiful people. And not by who you would think would be the usual suspects. I've always considered myself like really pretty heterosexual, but that Michael I've always had a special spot for that Michael Ealy. He's a beautiful man.
Sexy is sexy, man. I tell you, sexy is sexy. So the biggest difference to me is the nature of your hero. So in network television, your hero is pretty much a hero, but in streaming, you can have more of an anti-hero. In network television, you're selling soap mostly, and so usually they're very concerned about people not being able to identify positively with the hero. There's usually positive outcomes that the hero has. Where in streaming, that's not necessarily the case. You can have negative things happen, because you're not selling that soap. You're not tied to an advertiser. And I know this sounds very cold and technical, but it really is at the heart of what the difference is. It's not just the language you use, and that it really is the nature of the hero and the hero story that you're telling. So this is my real lower level, deeper level story talk about it, So if you look at streaming shows, look at heroes compared to heroes on network shows and the nature of their story and their journeys. It's different, it's not always, a positive thing. They're not always people you like, doesn't always work out,
Why is that though? But I feel like you have an answer. Why you can do that on a streaming? What's the difference? Is it that people,
because they're not beholden to advertisers.
Right.
And when you're beholden to advertisers don't want their product associated with something that could be construed as negative.
Got it.
It's that simple. It really is that simple. In the streaming, look at Apple Plus. So Apple Plus, of course, you're beholden to a corporate entity in some ways, which is Apple, which has an image, of course. So there are some things that they won't have for that, where Netflix is really just a digital company. What do they care, right? But Apple Plus is probably a little more careful. But, many shows, God, now I lost the point.
I think I have an example of what you're saying, which is also on Hulu, is The Handmaid's Tale, which for some reason I'm still watching with my wife. Yeah. And what you're saying is that they don't want to take a break in Handmaid's Tale and sell snackables.
Well, they can sell snackables if they want to, but they're not beholden to snackables.
I see what you're saying. So, Can you say snackable one more time?
Whether snackables, like for instance, there's a tier on Hulu, a paid tier where they actually have commercials, but then there's another tier where they don't. So whether snackables appears during a Handmaid's Tale is irrelevant to Handmaid's Tale.
Got it.
So they're not connected in that way. There's a price to be paid for that relationship at the network level. That's my cynical take on it, Pete.
But I don't even know if that's cynical. It is what it is. I mean,
it is what it is. And you know what the game is and you play by it. And that's what it is, basically,
Yeah, but we always did that. And you've had a long career. So you had to play the game in a much more corporate, wider or just fewer channels choices. You played it then. So it's certainly a lot different to play it now, which is why I want to ask, this show is, I've already told people about it, the premise of it, and I hope everybody goes and watches it. But it's mostly a black cast, and apparently the staff is black mostly. And I wonder what you think about in the description at Hulu. It's like listed. I'm reading. It says TVMA, so I guess that's mature, and it says drama, black stories. And I want you to tell the whites.
That's hilarious. It says black stories.
It says black stories, and I don't think anybody I know it's a black story.
That's so funny. I didn't even know it said that.
But tell the whites why we love a show like this.
Okay, first of all, these are human stories with a black cast, right? The human story you want to be concerned about is the messy life of this heroine, Jack Stewart. She's this amazing lawyer and everything, but her life is not on track. There are a lot of intersections, whether it's this fucked up relationship with her husband that for some reason isn't working out. She's now got this ex-client who was in prison, who's come back, that their sexual attraction is going to create a problem. There's other issues in her life with her kids and everything. She's heading up a murder case right now, and who knows how that's going to end up. There's a teaser in the pilot where we see eventually this is going to lead to her being tied up and held at gunpoint. And how's that going on? Her life is really messy right now. And these are human stories, but it's told with a black cast and everything, and there are things specific to the black culture and that sort of thing. But to me, it's the specificity that makes things universal.
There's a great example of that even in the trailer that any married person can relate to. I love this line that Jack says in the trailer where they're getting separated, and she says, basically something like, "I didn't sign up to sleep alone," meaning like if we're separated, I'm hooking up with other people. And I was like, that is not a black or white thing or anything else. That's such an interesting point about marriage and in this case, a trial separation. But yet Jack's code switches. You guys had a great conversation on your podcast about that. And I wanted to talk to you about just that in general and how you've managed and maintained working with everybody from Jon Stewart to Bernie Mac to Eddie Murphy. It doesn't matter. You work with everybody. And what role does blackness or culture play in that? And what does it play in the show?
So 2 points. So code switching is something we all do in different ways. Black people, we have our own kind of way. We've always done it where it's kind of a cultural code switch. Sometimes it appears in language and that type of stuff. But we all code switch. We code switch when we're around the guys as opposed to talking in mixed situations, or work is a code switch from personal, So we're all used to code switching in different situations, But the black experience on this as a way to be on a show is very unique because when I started in the business, most everybody was white, on shows, and I'd be the one black guy, that sort of thing.
Facts of life.
Yeah. Well, that was different. I was kind of appearing as an actor in that, but yeah, there was nobody black working on that show. There's nobody black on the writing staff.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And as a writer, when I was coming up, the way that Hollywood worked is if you were black, you could only work on black shows, shows that had black casts and that. But if you're white, you could work on any show. In fact, if you were white, we wanted you to run that black show. But if you were black, you couldn't run that white show. You couldn't even be a staff writer. And I'm like, well, this is fucked up. If anything, we're more familiar with the white culture than the white culture is familiar with the black culture.
Right.
Like, how are they masterful all of a sudden in telling my specific story, but I have no insight to this specific story? I mean, it's crazy, And so I was on a mission to change some of that, and to, open up opportunities for, black writers and, all writers really to be part of what I call controlling the narrative. Who gets to control the narrative? Who gets to be at the switch of saying how this story is being told? What's the point of view? What's the gaze here? Is it a white gaze? Is it a black gaze? What's the gaze in this particular story? And so having black people in many important positions, whether it's director of photography, line producer, executive producer, head of the network, showrunner, writer's room, all these things, really the interpretation of things goes away. And there's just a shorthand to things. You don't have to interpret everything and explain everything.
So much has changed just given the span of your career. And I wonder, I was just, preparing to talk to you. I was like, this guy really has done every type of show. Really amazing. And
I actually have. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, and also you have worked with almost like everybody, certainly in comedy. And then if you wanted to refine it,
2 degrees of separation for me, though, not 6 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, basically, look at who you've worked. And I wonder, like, I was just thinking, I'm like, are you at the top of a mountain in LA and people are just venturing up in hopes that they get to talk to you and maybe work with you? How often do you ever reach out to anybody and say, I'd like to work with you? You mentioned the Kerry Washington thing. Like, what do you guys just see each other at the NBC cafeteria, but like, each other because you're famous and then one thing leads to another?
No, not quite like that. It's not really quite like that. I mean, I guess I'm in a position now, but, that's a long process to get to that. It's not always like that. I've been fortunate over years to have different collaborations, but I don't always get seen in that too. It's taken me a long time to just get considered in the same category as other people I've seen in that. I have a lot of stories, believe me, I can tell you about being invisible, being fired from things and all that kind of stuff, so it's not all the rosy picture, it seems like. But a lot of my collaborations are very thoughtful too. My whole career, I've said no as much as I've said yes about the thing. Oh, absolutely. I've never just jumped into things, because it's a job or whatever. I've always, and a lot of it, to be honest, if I'm going to be honest, a lot of it was out of fear in the beginning because I'm like, I don't think I can bring anything to that. I have nothing to say in that arena. So I've always tried to be in, and you can't always do that, by the way, in showbiz. Sometimes you just have to do something.
Did you ever consider? Job, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here trying my hardest to imagine what you said no to, but you said yes to the highest profile, hardest, most consequential gig of all time, which was roasting the President of the United States at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which was like at peak White House Correspondents' Dinner. Was any of those during Obama? I'm like, I can't imagine what you said no to.
Well, honestly, I didn't say yes to that so much as that was part of my thing that I wanted to do years earlier. So I had kind of mapped that out as something I wanted to do. And then it happened. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is what I wanted to do. You know? So that was more of a manifestation thing, which is a whole different conversation, of where do I want to be? What do I want to do? And I've thought like that my whole career. So I've kind of mapped out the places I wanted to be. That's where the no's come from, where it's like, figuring out where I want to go, what I want to do. And if it fits in that, great. Anything that fits in that 1,000 yeses. If it doesn't fit in that, I really have to carefully consider because it's going to take time. Everything you do is going to take your time away. So you have to be thoughtful about, is this worth doing that? or putting it in there, or doing it here. So that's where the no's come from more than anything else, is being thoughtful about the path that I'm on, and whether it's the stories I want to tell, whether it was building my brand over the years of things that I wanted to do. So I wanted to make sure the projects I were doing fit in with something that I know I can, have a point of view on or a take on or that kind of thing.
Is there anybody you still haven't worked with that you really want to work with? Is there any kind of project that you haven't done that you want to do? Because you seemingly have done every type of media, and you've worked with everybody.
It seems like it, but there are a lot of people I love to work with. I'm starting to do some films now and being more thoughtful about that. I may direct some stuff.
You were great with Bryan Cranston. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of that film, but that was so good. He is.
Yeah, Jerry March Go Large.
Yeah, this past it's great.
And I'm gonna start acting more too. That's something that I kind of did on the side, and I've always wanted to do more. And when I did Jerry and March, David Franco, who's a great director, such a great guy too. Devil Wears Prada, all that stuff. He would come up to me sometimes. He goes, "Larry, you got to do more of this."
I'll tell you what.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You need to do more of this. You're really good." And I go, "Oh, thanks, David." And here you are. Whenever you're acting, Pete, and you're performing, your self-esteem drops very low. You're always concerned whether the thing you're doing is okay. But he really almost made me think, yeah, David, you're right. Maybe I should do more of this.
I don't matter at all, but it's exactly what I thought, because watching you with Cranston, who I think is one of the greatest, everybody thinks is one of the greatest of all time. And it's like, this is why I had that thought. I was like, I think I'm enjoying Larry more and his scenes with Cranston. And I guarantee Cranston felt that way about you. I know him a little bit, but and then I was like, he should do more of this kind of role or this kind of acting or acting in general. Cause I love watching. I was really laughing and thought it was great the way you just kind of did.
And I have done it over the years. I have a great agent. Her name is Jo Yao. I'm going to give Jo a shout out. I've been with Jo maybe 16, 18 years or something. And we've always, I said, here's the thing, Jo. Like, I'm not just an actor out there and I'm auditioning for roles and try to get what I get. I said, we have to be thoughtful about this, because my full-time job is trying to produce and doing all this stuff. And that takes a lot of time. I said, let's try to find, small roles and things where I can score. I can go in and do a small part. And it's a different way for actors to think. Actors usually think, how can I get the lead? How can I do all this thing? Right. And so I put myself in a different category, which makes it easier to be cast, because people can think, oh, Larry Wilmore wants to do this one day's work on something. That's great, or that type of thing. I helped Steven Soderbergh in this table read a couple of years ago. He needed some readers for it. And I did like 3 characters and really got big laughs because, Pete, I am a comedian,
Sure.
And he was so impressed, he cast me in the movie. And so I was in the laundromat, so things have happened that type of way. And, even though I'm in it and everything, you still don't know how you're doing and all that stuff. So it was nice to get some validation. And so now I'm developing a show that I'm going to be.
Oh, it's great. I can't wait. I've been a huge fan of yours forever. Love everything you do, and just really a joy to talk to you. 2 more quick questions, if I can. You just said, you made Soderbergh laugh. You've always made me laugh. And so keeping it 100, like the old show, you can't think about this long. So I'm not asking you who's the funniest. I'm asking just simply who has made you laugh the hardest in your career most consistently? Is it Bernie Mac?
Okay. I'm going to tell you the funniest first.
Okay. If you want, you're going to be singling out somebody. They're going to be losers with your answer, though.
Sorry. Right. But let me point out some of the people I worked with. Jim Carrey on Living Color, right? All those lanes and everything. Steve Carell, who's right up there, right? Bernie Mac, as you pointed out.
David Allen Greer, the Wayans. Jamie Foxx.
Everybody in The Office. Jamie Foxx. All those people, right? There's one person that stands out as the funniest, and it's not even close to me. Eddie Murphy.
Just like hanging out with, you worked on the PJs with Eddie Murphy. Is that what
Eddie will just make you laugh so hard. He's so talented. And you're like shocked at his charisma when he starts performing. You're like, oh my God, This guy is incredible. I remember working with him. We're doing the records and he's doing the voice, and Steve and I were looking and said, "Oh my God, no wonder he's like a blazing movie star."
Yeah.
He's so funny, and he's just so talented and he's so funny, and it's no accident that he became a star. He was the funniest. Now, like I said, that's a big competition. Those names that I named are some really funny people. I mean, really funny,
That's
so
great.
If I'm going to pick one, that's the one.
I love it. All right. And finally, you worked on The Daily Show. You had your own show, The Nightly Show. And originally, it was called The Minority.
The Minority Report. That's right. You remember that.
Yeah.
That was Jon Stewart's title.
Yeah, I mean, I was in that whole family at that time. I mean,
I know.
You were correspondent at The Daily Show, and I was doing warm up there a lot. And then I left for Colbert. And so, yeah, I mean, I was psyched when you got that slot, and I thought it was a great show. I got to be on it once and got to argue.
I remember that.
Got to argue with, it's the first time I think I ever found myself like being the minority and arguing against. And I was arguing with, I think, 3 black people. One person was on my side. You were being in the middle about corporal punishment, about spanking.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget. I was like, how am I out here alone on this? But it was a really fun and interesting, hilarious conversation. But anyway, my question to you is about politics. And the question is more specifically about, what do labels mean anymore, Larry? How do you characterize? I've been doing this thing with everybody in here on my show, Earth 1 and Earth 2.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to filter out like what is hardcore conspiracy stuff versus reality, whether it be who won the election, vaccines work. I don't know. We could pick any kind of litmus test we want. QAnon, the moon is made of cheese, but I don't know. I mean, you've always been hard to predict. You've always been a contrarian, unpredictable. You think you're an independent thinker. So I wouldn't put you even in the category because you're always interesting to hear from. But how do you look at the political landscape in America in 2022?
Yeah, it's very disappointing. So much of it is guided by extremes, which I don't like at all. The notion of, governing together and that kind of stuff has just, been trashed for a while, ever since, Mitch McConnell claimed that his main job was to make sure Obama wasn't going to get elected, and we've been in that. It seems like, because even Democrats worked with Bush, so, even though both sides have argued and fought, they've worked together on a lot of things, but, and that's just the political side of it. But the way that people have gone to the extremes and taken sides, Pete, I just can't believe some of the stuff. And I'm sure Twitter like is an echo chamber for a lot of that, but it does represent where some people stand and the things that people want to believe. The worst example is the Trump stuff right now, but of course, as a contrarian, the thinker, I do see it on both sides, even though you can't say both sides, whatever, I think if you're going to find truth in things, you have to examine everything carefully, make up your own idea about something, but don't just go along with any orthodoxy. I don't think, it must be examined. But I think that the Trumpies to me are probably the worst example of just cognitive dissonance, and the agenda. I came up with this word years ago. I called it a primo semgerius. And what it means is that your agenda is more important than the truth. Truth never matters, only your agenda.
Right.
Primo semgerius breaks down first Simpson jury. Is what that means. And
cognitive dissonance, kind of.
Yes, but the truth is a casualty of agenda. And truth right now is a casualty of agenda. Agenda is way more important. Look at the Herschel Walker situation. This obviously is not a man that is suited in any way. I'm not even talking about like ideology. He's not suited in any way to be in the Senate chamber from any standpoint, right? And the fact that he may win this race, is crazy. That is primo semgerius. That is only the agenda of having a Republican in there. We don't care who it is, is the only thing that matters,
Do you know Ye, as he goes by now? Any thoughts about his recent?
Who is that?
Kanye West.
Oh yeah, it's just Kanye's all over the place, which is crazy too. And Kanye, the thing about Kanye or Ye, whatever he's going by, is he'll have kernels of the truth in there, or insights on something, but then crazy gets attached to it so fast he veers off in a certain direction, and so it's like. Yeah, stop it,
Yeah.
So I feel, I shouldn't say I feel sorry for him. I'm sure he doesn't want or deserve my pity, but I've always never understood why people listen to him that much anyway. When he ran up on stage, and grabbed that award from Taylor Swift, I was like, no, Kanye. I'm like, at that point, he should have been cut off, from anybody taking anything he says seriously,
Yeah, that's when I didn't pay too close attention, but I remember that's the first rude thing that put me on the map. I was like, that was a terrible thing to do. Why would someone do that? Is there anything specifically with when you say the extreme on the left that you just get irked with and you don't understand at this point, the kind of extremes on the left?
I think if I'm going to point something out, it's the left has to stop thinking the government is going to solve every fucking thing. It just can't, we have to get back to community solving of issues more so than just a blanket issue for things, whether it's COVID, you have to have the same rules everywhere. The whole thing with the schools really made me upset. I have school teachers in my family, and teaching and education is a very complicated issue, but teaching has never been a one size fits all type of thing. Right. You can't treat it like that. And some of the issues are completely community issues, and they're all different, and people need to have more of an open mind about how we educate our children and not just have a one size fits all. And I think the left always feels like it's just one way to do it. Everybody should be doing it this way. And that kind of and it's the government that should be the lever of control for that,
Larry, I love listening to you and talking to you because I never know what you're going to say and I never know what you're going to do with your career, whatever's next. That should be the name of something you do. Whatever's next. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know I'm going to like it.
What's he going to do? Who knows?
What's he going to do? Well, but I really appreciate you doing this with me today. It means a lot to me to be in conversation with you, pal.
I appreciate it. Reasonable Doubt, you guys. It's on Hulu. Their black stories are being told according to Hulu, so you have to watch it.
It's a great show, and I've written my white review of it. It's so good. I'm really enjoying it, and congratulations on it. It's really cool. Your first, I guess, endeavor into drama.
I know. It's the first one. More to come, though. More to come.
Very exciting. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Pete.
All right, Larry Wilmore. But guess what? There's more. That's right. I know I just sounded like someone trying to sell you pillows or knives. Guess what? There's more. So Larry and I kept talking, and I hit record because I thought it was really interesting. We were talking just about media and activism, and I mentioned what happened at the LA City Council, and of course, he knows a little bit about that. And he just made this really interesting point. Not that he was defending anything that anybody said, let's be clear, but he was just talking about this kind of what he called snitch culture. I thought it was interesting, so I wanted to just have a little bit more here with Larry.
Activism and governance are not the same thing. They have different goals, and they achieve things by different means. Activism is usually ahead of the game, and is usually doing that. But governance has to be civil. There has to be a way in which it happens that is civil. Activism doesn't have to be civil. It's not the nature of activism, but those shouldn't be the same thing,
We just saw what you just said, I think, play out most acutely in your maybe what is it, LA City Council?
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother issue. Now, you can actually have two points of view on this. This is funny because now we're not even being recorded.
I hit record when you started talking.
Because here's the thing, Pete. I'm all over the place on this one. How much private conversation are you going to be accountable for? That's the thing. Who's recording these things? Why is no one talking about snitch culture right now? We live in a culture of snitches, and yes, there's so much private conversation that would be horrible if it's heard out there. And some of it can have something to do with what's going on, some of it not. I am not excusing what was said at all. It's terrible, but, it's different than policy. What are the policies that the people are doing, and what's going on out there? Those things never get separated. People always want to go into these little things and do the big things. The problem is once they get exposed, you're not going to have support out there and that type of thing. So you're kind of trashed anyway. And I get that, which is more the reason why people have to resign in those situations, more so than anything they probably did.
But don't you think I was thinking about that in terms of if I'm running for Congress and I go to your house and there's 10 people there, I'm talking to, I can't even be honest there because the snitch culture is to some extent as a product of the fact that we all have amazing recording devices on us. Like, it's not like there'd be a funny sketch about, the founding fathers, they got a lantern and they're like, what did you say? Let me hold.
I know. It's the thing. You're not allowed to just have, inappropriate conversations, Yeah. Is that inappropriate conversation? Yes. Are you allowed to have those? Apparently not,
No, you can't even.
Most of my conversations, Pete, are inappropriate. That's the thing with my friends and stuff like that. It's the thing that keeps me alive. Like, we'll say things, we say tongue in cheek, of course, because we're making jokes and that type of stuff, but if people heard the type of language that we use and the things we say, it's like, oh my God, that's terrible. Yeah, but we're saying it to each other and we're saying it.
Yeah, but I do the exact same thing, but I only do it with like 3 people. Like then there's another tier.
Speak it and make sure I don't send it. I don't record it.
Right. Yeah. No,
who's in that room, Pete? Who's in that room going, all right, I'm snitching on these motherfuckers because this is like
someone who thinks they have something to gain from it. I don't know. Maybe
they did the right thing. And by the way, maybe they did the right thing. Maybe this is something that's been going on. And they said, hey, these people have horrible agendas and people need to hear it. So I have to say that could have been the case too. And maybe that was the right thing to do in that case. I'm speaking overall of this wanting to out private conversation, I'm not completely on board with that. I get it where if it can serve a good, I understand it, but
there's a lot to be talked about with that idea. That should be unpacked and examined because it's a huge cultural thing simply because if human behavior was always to do this, but you couldn't record, it used to be like, guess what so-and-so said? And be like, I don't know. Did he say it just like that? He sure did. But now it's like, I can record anything I want. And then I can, by the way, upload it and share it to the world immediately and take you down and end you.
Well, just think about this. Like if you're having sex with someone, just think about the things that you say in that private arena, or what people say. And if someone, recorded that and put it out of context or wrote it down or that sort of thing,
Well, I usually am reciting sonnets. I'm not sure exactly.
Of course you are, Pete.
No, I think even worse than that are the noises. Whatever noises you're making to communicate to your lover, no one needs to hear those.
So now, Larry Wilmore doesn't want. Larry Wilmore in favor of racist talk. No.
Not at all. No, not at all. No, I think what you were dividing the question about snitch culture and everything surrounding that is separate from any specific event.
And people just love it. People love snitching now. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It used to be that snitches got stitches, but apparently not.
Well, since I'm still recording, who would you like to snitch on, Larry? He's got nothing.
I don't want stitches, man.
All right. Well, I hit stop again on the record, on the interview. I just thought that was great. Larry Wilmore, everybody. How about it? I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I'm looking forward to sharing my conversation tomorrow with Ellie Velshi, but I can't do any of this without your support. If you're not a paid subscriber, please get on it right now. StandUpWithPete.com. This is what I am doing with my life, and I'm loving it, and I really can't do it without your support. It's a lot of work every day. It's free, but it isn't cheap, so I need you to sign up. And you get to be a part of our awesome, growing community. Welcome to all new subscribers. We've had a few over the past week, and I'm really psyched to have you. Hope to meet you at the Thursday night hangouts anytime on the Discord platform. You can hang out with us, help promote the show, be a part of our street team, the stand-up street team. And those guys are doing a great job. Matt Carlson, Barry Hummel, Tina Winsett, to be specific, posting videos, clips from my interviews and entire interviews. Go to youtube.com/Pete Dominick or check out any of my social media channels, and you can see clips of my interviews, including from today's with Larry Wilmore. Learn more about that if you're a paid subscriber on the Discord platform. And that's it. I'm going to wrap it up. John Carroll singing us out as he does every day. He's an Emmy-winning singer and songwriter, and he is part of our community, and we love him very much. He wrote this song for us and the world. You can go buy it. Go to johncarroll.org and pay for the song that you love so much and get to own it and listen to it anytime. Take it away, Johnny.
Get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience. Well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the seat of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on.